Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 22 of the anime series Mobile Suit Gundam, Iron-Blooded Orphans. And much as was my surmise, it is truly a time of mourning now for all of Tekkadan in the loss of their strategist, the heart and soul of Tekkadan itself, Biscuit. Not least of which for Oruga himself, who has holed himself up in his own sort of private quarters, incapable of really wrapping his mind around the loss they have all sustained. His confidant, his go-to man, his conscience, his strategist, all of these things have now been stolen out of the equation. And he can't even move far enough along to really consider what's next. What is the next step? A lot of Tekkadan are we seeing in this episode, hallmarked quite expertly, I have to say, by the just torrential downpour of rain to sort of dampen the mood, no pun intended. You know, you see this from time to time in films and TV series and such like that, and it sometimes borderlines the cliche, but I really felt it lended well to the atmosphere of this very depressive sort of stagnation that everyone is in. And we see that everyone in Tekkadan is respectively trying to keep moving. They're trying to keep up a sense of momentum to keep from having to dwell and really be completely overwhelmed by their grief. Even to the point, in the absence of Oruga's voice of clarity, his voice of leadership, are some characters becoming argumentative. What is our next step? Surely it's got to be vengeance. Surely we have to strike back at the heart of the monster that is Galahorn or Carta Issue, the person who ripped our brother from us. And you have Atra, who is very much, you know, sort of the pinnacle of this, trying to keep busy, trying to continue to make dishes for everyone to eat and everything like that. And she is doing her utmost best to hold herself together. But even she is still contemplating, you know, what of Biscuit's younger siblings? What can we do for them? The promises we made to them. It's a common theme. Returning to Mars, and Mikazuki points out, you know, it's not that easy. We still have a job to do, even if we've lost someone this integral to the equilibrium, the well-being of what Tekkadan is, what its purposes are. We still have a job to complete. And this is completely and utterly lost on Oruga for, you know, the majority of the episode, understandably so. He has never lost someone this close to him. You know, while the group has, as a whole, collectively come together in the face of losses before, there's never been one this poignant or personal for them all, for Oruga most specifically, especially in the lack of their being able to conclude the conversation they were having about what is the next step, what is the best choice for the future of Tekkadan, what is the path of least concern and worry and risking our lives that Biscuit had finally come around to, you know, considering for himself in the loss of his brother and wanting to protect and see to the growth of his little sisters and taking care of them and their well-being and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, it was much more profoundly heartbreaking than I thought, because it, as someone who has, you know, sustained very real losses in my life, my parents, grandparents, friends here and there, very much is at a time of mourning where you, more often than not, you just try to keep on keeping on. You just try to, like, not let the sadness, not let the tears free. You just try to keep living your life. And there's only so much of that you can do before you falter, before you break down. And sometimes it's a matter of, you know, needing support, but then sometimes the support is not enough. And Oruga, who can Oruga go to? I find myself very much relating to this particular scenario because once I lost my parents at an early age, no longer do I have anyone I can look to for advice. Very much do I have to figure everything out on my own. As the leader of Tekkadan, with everyone involved being younger than he, or at least in a position of command lesser than he, who can he turn to? It's all on his shoulders to figure out how to come out of this. And so I was actually fairly mind blown by the concussive confrontation between he and Mika by the end. Mika, I thought, he was going to lay the smackdown on Orga. And the way he went about it, I mean, Mika is not the best at communication. So, I mean, the way he's getting all up in Orga's face almost felt, adversarial, almost felt threatening. When he's saying, who do I have to kill? What do I have to destroy? Tell me, give me purpose, give me direction. Again, asking that question, surely we are going to seek vengeance and reap the rewards of taking down the benefactors who stole our heart and soul from us. Surely that has to be part of this mission, which the grander scheme of is to get to this place of peace, this place of calm, this true home you promised me all those ages ago. And like the tone of that whole confrontation, it just kind of really surprised me, took me aback that this actually did spark a level of rejuvenation in Orga. And for him to then stand in front of the crowd, and now they do have a purpose, specious though it may seem to we, the viewer, and even people like Maribit and the black engineer guy, whose name I don't know if we ever actually caught, the old man. They are conscious, they're cognizant of the idea this is not the right path. But what can we do? If this is the thing that injects that vitality and that direction back into Tekkadan, what can we do? It's too late. They're out for blood now. One of their own has been ripped away from them, and what more can they do? And so all of that just, it was emotional and moving and quizzical to certain extents as to this being the driving force. I mean, it is completely the opposite of what Biscuit would have wanted. He had finally reached the idea of peace and living beneficially and no longer risking lives and going to war and going to battle and seeking vengeance. These are all the things he had finally realized made very little sense. And so it's tragic that this is, of course, their sort of final invocation in his name now. To them, they would never see it as such, but it's almost a slap in Biscuit's face. And that's what makes it that much more emotional, And so, I mean, apart from that, the two big things I was left with, other than McGillis very much trying to be the voice of manipulation to Baldwin as far as what to do with Ein, to align him to the Leia Vijana, or however it's pronounced, system, and very much mechanize him, which is fairly how I expected it to go. I figured McGillis would take that point of view and try to push Baldwin along, even to the point of including Baldwin in that framework. You upgrade yourself as well. I don't remember, now that I think of it, if Baldwin had already had that upgrade, that cyberization, if you will, mechanization, but I got very much the gist that he's saying, you and I, man, you're not going to take down those space rats unless you suit up, for all intents and purposes. Apart from that, the two biggest things that I took away from this episode was just how manipulative McGillis's father is, pinioning, being responsible for the pinioning of putting McGillis together with Baldwin's family, marrying them, having all of these other families taking on Karta Issue as an adoptive child to get the power from that family and this family and that family and everything. All of these very highly influential internally to Gjallarhorn families. Is he manipulating from within and trying to control this level of power? Very much have I been wondering if this was McGillis's own impetus, his own driving force. Although for him, seemingly the idea is to, reconfigure Gjallarhorn from within, take down the corruption and build it anew. And we see elements of this in that conversation between he and Baudouin, talking about the formation of Gjallarhorn, going back to the earliest history, where mechanized people who were part of that Calamity War using mobile suits, were the founding fathers, in a sense, of this now perverted estimation of Gjallarhorn. And of course you have Baudouin thinking of Ein more as the pure blood of this whole Gjallarhorn, what Gjallarhorn is supposed to be, you know. So the contrasting there is quite interesting, because in a sense McGillis and his father are very cut from the same cloth, only they're seemingly going in different directions. And at least for me, I almost was, you know, feeling by the end of this revelation of what, you know, McGillis's father is now doing, what he has been doing all along, it almost makes him the clear-cut and decisive uber villain of the series. If somehow that doesn't end up being the case, I'm going to be sorely disappointed, because he is the Emperor Palpatine, in a sense, of this entire affair. That, as well as the fact that, very simply put, Carta Issue not only survived the attack from Mika, apparently, off-screen, they managed to sneak in and sneak her out, and she's completely uninjured. It looked like she was all but crushed, like in a ball of tin foil closed by a fist. I didn't expect anything but pulp to come out of that mobile suit. And she's up and walking around and getting bitchy in people's faces as usual. Like, that blew my frickin' mind. You know, people were talking about you know, what if she survives and what will she do if she does and all this kind of stuff in the comments on my last episode discussion video. And every comment that, you know, was along that line, just taking it for granted she probably survived, I was kind of like, I don't know, man. I mean, that was a pretty lethal blow. We saw less impact on, you know, Akihiro's brother Masahiro, and he died. We saw about the same amount of impact to Ein, you know, through his fight with Mikazuki and all of that. And, like, he now has to be cyber upgraded. Not Carta Issue, she's fine. She's perfect. You know, ornery as ever, bratty as ever. It's hilarious. I love her character and everything like that, but I'm just shocked that for what seemed to be the case of her being crushed alive, she's fine. You know, okay, whatever. That logic out the window. But anyway, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see these first steps taken now by Tekkadan in the wake of the loss of Biscuit. And as I say, just that contrast of it being very much against what Biscuit's own wishes might have been. And the tragedy yet to unfold. And it's interesting, where Orga had a lack of leadership focus, are we seeing Cordelia coming into her own, you know, basically going to people like McGillis and his AKA, his pseudonym, and you know, the Montag Corporation and Tewaz, and working out a roundabout route to get where they need to go so they can try to avoid Gjallarhorn and all this kind of stuff. It just blew my mind. Definitely interesting character contrasts in this episode, to say the least. And yeah, like I say, otherwise I cannot wait to see where we go next, how this all unfolds, whether their journey by train goes unscathed, unattacked, you know, if they're able to succeed in the re-election of this dirty old man to the Arbrow and everything like that, and whether or not they will confront McGillis's father and his trying to reposition that particular placement for the purposes of his, you know, succeeding to becoming the power, the ultimate power of the entirety of this framework. And yeah, so otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.